Hello, everyone. Welcome to the JupyterLab developer meeting for Friday, September 2nd, 2016. And yeah. So who wants to go first? Darian?
Hi. So I actually have a thing that I'm going to need help with. Steve and I spent a good chunk of time today talking about it. Basically, I have updated the console UI to be in line with some of the design ideas that we've had so far. The thing is that in addition to some design attention, I think we really need to put some user experience thought into it, because there's ramifications basically with the new prompt. So I was going to do just a quick demo and screen share so you can see the sorts of problems that have arisen. This is all actually in my PR, so anyone who wants to play with it live can do that, but I did not take my PR out of work in progress because I don't think we might want to merge yet, but you guys can decide after seeing it. So
Cool.
With that, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. This is the state of affairs as in the current PR. And what we've got is the prompt is now docked at the bottom, and it's actually a phosphor split panel, so it can be resized like so. And you'll notice that there's this gray thing here, and what that gray thing is the actual number of lines that are in the prompt, which is one of the issues I want to raise, because when you resize to this, you might actually think you have a blank slate, like that much space to type in, but you don't. You don't have an editor here. What you have is a single line. You could hit Control Enter, but keep in mind there's actual console history going on. So when you hit down, it's going to clear it, and when you hit up, it's going to populate it. So this is a thing that I think either we might want to make this a split panel. We might consider making it automatically grow. We might consider having something like the Qt console with the gutter with the ... dots. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind.
So one comment about that. So the way we have our code mirror configured is to have its vertical height grow dynamically. You can alternately configure code mirror's height to have different logic.
But even if we have the height grow dynamically, the trouble is, so right now I've actually got it set to overflow and create a scroll bar, because I think it would be really disruptive if the actual pane that you've picked the size for changes size. But we might decide that's what we want, and we can just pick a minimum or maximum height, or a minimum height for the content, something like that. So yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is that since it's a split panel, I've created this toggle functionality, so you could have it side by side in case this is how you feel like working, which I think is nice. But again, you have all this vertical space, which makes it feel like what you're dealing with is this, but actually what you're dealing with is the one line that will grow. So you can paste a lot of stuff and see a lot of stuff, and that itself is nice. But I put in that gray background, which I don't really like, just so you would know that when you hit down, you're not going to go down. And when you hit up, you're going to go up in history. Because otherwise, if it were blank white, you might hit down thinking you're going to go down. And that's not what's going to happen. So anyway, this is the current state of affairs. And it's, it's not unusable. It's fine. But I wasn't sure if we should be merging this in quite yet. The example also shows this. And by the way, another thing I want to raise is that I think we need to be a little bit more disciplined about not just getting examples to compile, but checking to see if they work. Literally every single example was broken this week. They're fixed now, but when we change stuff, we should probably take a look there because people look at our examples as simplified ways of messing with stuff. So if we have broken stuff there, it's not so great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I really wanted to go over. But so I think in addition to just doing a design review and how stuff looks, I think we really need to think through subtle behaviors like what's our editor actually do.
Did you try having the split pane grow as the code mirror input was?
No, but actually, let me share my screen again. I did not do that, but as a model, Steve and I talked about this a lot today. As a model, we were looking at Firefox's console, which is different from Chrome's, and Firefox's console looks like this, and it's got its prompt is down at the bottom if you see, and its output is on top, just like what we're talking about. If you want it to grow, you can do Shift Enter, and that does do this. And you see there's a single prompt. The prompt is still at the top, and they've decided there's a minimum, there's a maximum amount that it's going to grow. And now what you see is my scroll bar getting smaller because it's not going to grow larger. So this is a model we could go off of. I personally hate the idea of my panes that I've set a specific size for changing. And the Firefox one, you can't drag this. You can't change it with the mouse. It does it automatically. So we could switch to a phosphor box panel instead of a split panel and do this sort of behavior. Or we can keep the split panel, allow you set the size. But if you've set the size, I would highly suggest not overriding and changing that size. If you haven't set the size, then yeah, maybe.
If you were to make them fixed sizes, there's not really a need to use phosphor box panel. You could use CSS to get the sizing automatically.
I can have
because the only way that you could get the box panel to do that kind of behavior is to automatically update the minimum height of the widget and then do a fit. So like to implement Firefox's behavior, you'd be better off using just regular CSS to do that layout.
I don't know how to take, so I actually tried this with CSS initially. I didn't know how to take the prompt out of the flow, stick it on the bottom, and then make it act as though it's in the flow.
I don't think you need to take it out of the flow. You can use Flexbox for this, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, that's certainly worth experimenting, especially if we decide this is the model we want. But I think now we're at a point where we have certain models to look at, and we should pick one. I don't think it's a great use of time to experimentally build these out because they take more time to build than they do to think through from his point of view.
What you might also try, I know in Chrome you can do this. I don't know if you can do it in Firefox, but in Chrome you can inspect the inspector, so you can actually see how they're doing that layout with CSS.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm not sure in Firefox cannot, but the code might still be there that we could check in their source code. It might be worth a while, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's a good point too. Anyway, so that's the state of affairs.
Yeah, I totally agree that we're probably just going to have to check it out and play with it interactively. I should say, originally when we had envisioned the visual design, we were imagining that the Firefox type behavior. And so, but let's just play with the current version and try to get a feel of where it works, where it doesn't work, and how we could iterate.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think about where it is right now? Should we merge it?
No, let's hold on. I mean, I could play with it some today.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to play with is just the side panel version.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know, like we definitely have thought and talked previously about having modes in the notebook or on JupyterLab where like input and output were side by side. The thing that's weird about side by side in console mode is by definition, the input area can only have one cell. So it's like a wasted vertical space, like you noted. So it may not make sense, but I just want to play with it and see how it feels. And I think there's no substitute.
I mean, you know, treating it like a REPL where you have a whole file worth of content and you keep hitting up and editing it some more and executing it, hit up, and, you know, treating it as a thing where you use it as a way to build out your script, I could sort of see that. But again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what sort of behaviors this will encourage, and I'm not sure what we want out of it.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's, yeah, thanks for working on this. I think having a good console experience is going to make a huge difference, and it will make a really unique thing that we don't have today, and so it's really important. And yeah, great work.
Cool. Thanks.
Who wants to go next? Steve? Going backwards today.
Okay. So I've been working this week on a custom Webpack plugin and a custom RequireJS loader, the two pieces of which we thought were necessary to enable third-party extensions to build themselves standalone, but only I'll do deduping either on the server right before serving the files or on the client as a worst-case scenario. But using the Semver mangled and version mangled import paths to make sure you only get one of each library if available. We had originally thought that we might want to support doing a single Webpack build on the final machine as an advanced behavior. But one thing I thought about the ramifications of that is Webpack loaders are global. So if an extension had its own loaders that it needed to produce its bundle, those may conflict with the upstream loaders. So we can't necessarily create a single bundle sanely without knowing, the person that creates that bundle has to have all the information and make us the same choice. But I don't know that we can do that in an automated fashion. So what this enables us to do, sorry, go ahead.
So basically, we would have to merge all the Webpack configs. Is that right?
Yeah, but you wouldn't know in an automated fashion whether that would work. Yes.
Yeah.
But doing this enables us to produce bundles that are guaranteed to work within themselves. But if they're requiring a module that's already been loaded elsewhere, they only get one of those things. So we get the dedupe behavior. The bundles themselves are produced in a self-consistent fashion for the extension author. And we may even be able to do server-side dedupe by in Python by basically rewriting the node Semver module, which is like 1,000 lines of code that does a lot of regex matching and parsing of Semvers. It might be worth just doing that rather than having this node dependency where we take manifests that ship with these bundles and dedupe and splice together a single bundle that has only one version of each library that we want, each module. So it's something to consider. But I just had a conversation with Chris where we were trying to get around this problem of by using the RequireJS loader, we were insisting that things that may not necessarily have been able to work asynchronously, we were trying to make them work asynchronously. An example was HTML2 parser that is required by our sanitized HTML package. It has some circular imports that work under the node synchronous model, in that there are some things that are imported lazily that enable you to get around the circular import behavior. And by hoisting them to a top level asynchronous require, we weren't enabling that to happen. Now, within a Webpack bundle, they get around that because everything is available synchronously. So Chris's idea was, well, we've already got the Webpack bundle. Why don't we, instead of using their numbered require statements, we basically hijack it. And instead of a numbered require, we take what I was already generating from this Webpack bundle and this December mangled require. We also provide our own define function, so you put those two together, and we've got the equivalent behavior that we had before without forcing things to be asynchronous that didn't want to be. So you still only load modules once, and this forces a lot less mangling on my part. I still don't have a clear way that in mind of how I was going to enable asynchronous loading of modules from that Webpack bundle, but this makes it seamless. So all it is we mangle the Webpack require of a numbered module to the December mangled string, and we wrap each of these things in a define block that's our own define that we're saying is on the page, or at the head of this bundle that we're creating. And so as things get defined, they're in our module registry. We have, as things get required, we look it up in our registry, similar to what's already done. So basically, we're just taking what's at the top of every Webpack bundle, making our own slightly tweaked version that takes into account Semver and Bob's your uncle. That's the direction we're going to try to head right now. It looks pretty straightforward. So it's basically just taking the code I've already written to and tweaking it slightly. So rather than force feeding it into an AMD loader, we're going to use our own custom loader instead. But all the pieces are already there to do what we need to do.
Key points is that we're not using RequireJS. We're replacing that functionality that RequireJS gave us with our own loader, and we're not doing any hoisting, which allows these same circular imports to work. So if you can Webpack it, it will work, basically.
Right, and that doesn't preclude someone from adding RequireJS to the page and opting into making their own loader that calls our loader and provides a RequireJS, an AMD entry point if they so wanted. But we're not tied to having AMD on the page or RequireJS.
Sounds like, from my perspective, that still sounds pretty complicated, but
how is this different than what we were talking about with having just a black box for particular modules?
Because this enables everything to be deduped. We no longer have this problem where you have this unknown thing that may break. How do you diagnose it? It was a pain to figure out the HTML2 parser was a problem. So how do you diagnose it? How do we enable the users to find it? It's the documentation or talking to one of us. And so then say you've isolated this, and the RequireJS notes say that about 95% can be wrapped. So you got 5% of cases in general that can't be wrapped. You've identified them somehow. Those now become black boxes. Now, if they in turn require something that you would like to have deduped, then now you have the problem. Then you can't black box. Whereas this is actually a lot easier. I'm having to do a lot less manipulation of the Webpack bundle. All I'm doing is replacing the function definitions with our own defined statements, and then the required by number to a require with a Semver mangled thing, and then we write our own header. It's a lot simpler conceptually and to implement, and we don't have to have two different technologies. We're not forcing Webpack and RequireJS. It's Webpack using our own loader semantics.
So this
is a single Webpack
this sounds
plugin that generates something that we can consume with our loader.
Okay.
Right. It seems like this is essentially what we were trying to do when we were trying to use the DLL plugin to generate a reference and then do dynamic loading from the DLL manifest. Is that what
yes,
I'm
but that doesn't work is because within that DLL, it'll still call something with a named function within itself. So you can't dedupe within the DLL plugin. We're enabling that.
So okay.
What this will also enable us to do, though, is have plugins loaded dynamically. So you could put one of these bundles on the page later, and it would buy into that same loader that we already have on the page, and you still would you would still get the deduping effects. So this would allow plugins to be loaded dynamically.
So we have each package become essentially a black box Webpack bundle. We generate a manifest for all the numbered modules in that Webpack bundle, and we basically make a manifest and load those into our loader, so that when
the numbers would be replaced with our own the Symburn module name. So the Webpack numbers go away. Like that's part of our.
Wait, we don't see the numbers, or we're going to use the numbers internally to map from.
There are no numbers. I'm using the number within the Webpack plugin. It gives me a number. I'm replacing that with the full module mangled Semver path. So everything within the bundle is opting into this system. So you're always ensured that you're getting this behavior. Whereas we wouldn't get that from the DLL plugin.
Right. Okay.
Everything is synchronous, but also is fetching the correct module, the deduped module.
So our loader becomes synchronous because it's using Webpack bundles that have already been preloaded. Yep. That's okay. That's a big key.
And the code to do it is mostly there. It's just a matter of tweaking it a little bit, and it actually becomes a lot simpler. And we know the problem of how to load the asynchronous bundle is just solved. So that was something I wasn't entirely sure how to do. Now it just falls out of the wash.
Yeah, and we're not making a bundle per package here either, right? We can just make one bundle for your entire package.
Yep.
Including dependencies. And that one bundle contains, all your dependencies.
And nothing is opaque. Everything is a name defined that you can replace.
Right.
Every single module is addressable and replaceable.
And Steve, what you might consider doing as well on your emit stage to make it easier for the server to dedupe on the server side is you can add header and footer tags, like just in JS comments using particular formats, so you know where the limits of this particular module is with whatever its version is. So you can eliminate having to have a JS parser.
Yep. I think it's word for word a comment Steve made yesterday.
I was just gonna let him
know. You're so nice, Steve. That sounds really good. I like making it synchronous instead of asynchronous.
From the perspective of a plugin author, they're just using a Webpack plugin that we provide, and they write their Webpack bundle. We give them an example Webpack bundle with some loaders that make sense, but that's it from their perspective. They're producing a Webpack bundle as far as they're concerned. It just has a different style loader. So all the regular semantics.
How do we extend this in the future to do dynamic requires that may be asynchronous? So on the actual page, are we using require, or are we using our own? I mean, how does it work on the actual page?
So there's the ensure function that becomes part of the Webpack header, and so we'll just copy that. And instead of the public path being global, it'll be private to each module, so it'll know where to fetch that. So that's the only change necessary. It's really going to be straightforward. And then whereas right now it's a direct lookup by module number, we're just swapping in this Semver lookup that we've already got written. So it's really close to done.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So we got all the pieces together.
In the future, do we have the capability of doing dynamic loading? The asynchronous?
Yes. So you write a RequireJS loader that opts into this system, and that's all you need.
Okay. And then everything becomes asynchronous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very external level, it becomes
from the perspective of that consumer, it would be an asynchronous import of that module, but they're all available. So yeah.
Anything.
So this could be used. This could be used, for example, by the notebook. They just have their own custom loader.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
if
know
you needed to reach out and load another bundle of stuff, you could do that too. Just load the bundle as a new script tag, wait until that script tag is finished loading, and then use our require function to pull stuff out of that bundle.
Yeah. Nice. We're getting there.
Yeah, great
Hopefully
work.
this is the last stop.
Exactly. Yeah, great work. This is a huge.
Is this what's in your PR, or is this still to do?
We just had this conversation. So what's in my PR works in that it had isolated that HTML2 parser and it loads everything on the page. It was producing that black box and consuming it, and it worked. But it was brittle and not what we wanted. And we were fighting against Webpack. Now we're going to work with Webpack and just tweak it a little bit. So it's a lot cleaner and a lot saner.
Yeah, nice. No more fights.
No more fights.
So that's all you wanted to cover, Steve?
Yep.
Okay. So I've mostly been working on CSS, but wanted to talk a little bit more about context menus. One question I had is, we talked previously, and the context menu event does have keyboard state along with it. Am I to understand correctly that we could look at that keyboard state and either allow default or prevent default? So we could have keyboard state modify whether the user sees the browser default context menu or a custom one that we provide. Is that correct understanding of how context menus work?
The keyboard state that you can have is whether things like shift key or alt key or meta key or control key are down. You can't have arbitrary other stuff.
And meta key is only true on OS X. It's not actually viable for use on other keyboards for other operating systems. So you really only have 3 keys: Control, Shift, and Alt.
But can you?
But we
trigger the context, the document? Can you trigger the default context menu, the browser context menu?
No, you can't trigger when you're stuck. Wait, Chris, did you say you can and I said you can't, or did we both say you cannot?
No, we agree you cannot. It's a security issue.
That's what I thought.
Well, but a question though, if we have an event listener on the context menu thing and we don't prevent default, will that default context menu show up?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So we can, we can't trigger it, but we can filter it, and so we could.
That's right.
So we could basically we can have a keyboard shortcut toggle whether or not the browser default or our custom context menu shows up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Fair.
Okay. And then the next question I had. So Chris, you had talked about having a global a global context menu system that basically looks at what element is clicked and then walks up the DOM tree finding commands that are relevant, right?
Yep. A lot like we have key bindings.
Would we need a separate? Obviously, right now the key bindings are selector scoped, but you may want to have context menu items that are not keyboard shortcutted. So would we need our own sort of context menu registry, basically?
Yeah, we would need another object that's similar to a key map, but it would be like a context menu map or something like that. I could write one. I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah.
So it would actually be easier, far easier than the key map manager, because you don't have to maintain transient state or parse keyboard events or keyboard characters or any of that kind of stuff. This would be very easy to do. So
because a part of what we're seeing is we're seeing other contexts where we want to put context menus, and implementing those by hand each time, especially now that the way you do that now. So if a given widget wants a context menu, it has to create its own command registry, a private command registry to use with the menus, which are command driven now. And I mean, we can do that. It's not that hard. But if we can have a sort of an easy global way for widgets to declare this, or plugins to declare this type of logic, I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, I mean, we could, I mean, there's two parts to that. One is making it easy to build context menus based off the global command registry. That's one issue. And then there's another issue of making it easy for widgets to make their own context menu thing. And maybe a context menu manager is the easiest way to do that. But if the question is about if it's verbose to declare because you got to build up the context menu and also put commands in the command registry, that can all be abstracted by writing yourself a little function that does it for you and just takes some array of objects and does the right thing. I mean, I can't simultaneously have super easy APIs everywhere in Phosphor and have the APIs that give us the flexibility that we need to do the custom things that we need. And so having an easy function to generate a one-off context menu, I would probably put in the realm of a function that should live in JupyterLab. But for something where we want a context menu manager that does this kind of CSS selection to dynamically build the menu and pop it up, I could make that part of Phosphor because it's an analog to key map, but for context menus.
I'm keeping notes here. Also create a simple lab for creating widgets. Context menus. What does everyone think? Do we think it's do we want to have sort of a global context menu plugin that makes it really easy for plugins to declare? And also, I think part of that would be standardizing in that plugin how the keyboard behavior works to get the browser default context menu. Like, I think it would be useful to have a simple story that we can tell everyone, hey, if you need the browser default context menu, do this.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that, I would just make it as another thing that's added on the application object. And maybe there's a Boolean thing that says only show the context menu if control is held down or something like that. We can decide what that is. But I would put it on the app object just like we have commands and key map on the app object. So they all go through the same command registry, and just make sure, like, there's really, as soon as you enter selectors into the mix, there's really no need to have multiple context menu managers or make your own, because you can just have a more specific selector. One thing that we'll need to decide on this, though, is in the context of selector-driven menu items, how we decide where to put if and where and how to put separators and ordering items within the menu that's generated, and like whether we want to include some kind of notion of rank to order things within the menu, or if we should only order them based on selector specificity. And maybe everything that matches at a given node gets its own separation kind of thing. Like those are some questions to answer. Like how do we go from, okay, these are the commands I want included to the menu in the menu. How do I order them within that, and where do I add separators? And secondarily, what do we handle? What do we do about submenus? Because submenus are not commands. So you have command menu items, and then you have submenu menu items, and we'll need to address that as well. So there's some outstanding questions there about how we want to do this, but I don't think it's certainly not unsolvable.
Okay. I can open an issue. I do think we should write that simple function in JupyterLab for creating context menus, and I can open an issue about that. Do you want to open a phosphor issue to track the bigger picture on that side?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. And then the other is CSS. I've been playing a lot with the CSS variables, and overall they're a lot of fun actually. They seem to work really well. I've tested them on Firefox and Chrome, and both seem to work well. Chris, are you aware of any bugs or oddities in Firefox in terms of how Phosphor manages things like min height? I found a few cases in Firefox where our existing CSS had a min height, but that wasn't enough. Firefox seemed to also need a max height.
Can you open an issue with what you were seeing?
Yes.
I'll certainly take a look. I'm not aware of any issues, but I can certainly take a look. So if you can reproduce it and open an issue.
Yeah, the other thing I was a little worried about was when are CSS variables actually calculated? And part of it, I'm wondering if there's some subtle edge cases where and let me think if I can describe. Basically, how do CSS properties interact with attach and detach of DOM elements? And what I'm wondering is, does Phosphor make assumption about when min height is set, and does that interact in subtle ways with when CSS properties?
My blue jeans is starting to lag. Let me restart it real quick, and then I haven't answered your question, but I'm going to hop out and hop back in, and then I'll answer that.
Okay, great.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me state what I think your question is, and the question is: Phosphor pulls out certain information from CSS, such as min width and min height, or min sizes, and uses that in order to compute its layouts or the boundaries for its layouts. And if these things are defined via CSS variables, and at some point at runtime the values of these would change, when and if so can Phosphor update itself based on the changes to these values? Do I understand that correctly?
Except for one thing, and that is right now, the issues I'm running into, the CSS variables themselves are never changing.
Okay, and so what issue are you running into? So you're saying that you're causing something that should cause a variable to change, and Phosphor's not?
No, it was more in the land of based on a CSS variable, I thought the min height should be one value, but when I looked at the computed value in the DOM, it was a different value.
Okay. So the question is, okay, so there's some subtlety here. Was the computed value in the DOM due to some inline style minimum size that was written like directly into the node? because
I don't remember actually.
Because if this was on a panel, like was it like on a panel you were looking at the min size?
No.
And it wasn't what you were seeing? Like for example, like split panels and box panels and that kind of stuff, they automatically compute their min size based on what layout information they're given, and they will write that min size to the DOM on any given fit. So when a child is added or removed, or when it's attached or detached, the panel will recompute its minimum size and update itself on its inline style so that its ancestors can know what the minimum size of this thing should be, because that informs their layout potentially. And so if you're trying to set through CSS the minimum size of a panel, like a box panel or a split panel or something like that, that won't work. That's not Phosphor's model. Box panels and split panels and things that use absolute layout automatically compute their minimum and maximum sizes.
Okay, let me look back at it and
Okay.
try to understand. But that's but so just as a general conceptual question, when do CSS variables actually get calculated and set on the elements that use them?
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, anytime, if you look through the timeline and you look through what the browser's doing, anytime there's a style recalculation, those variables will be evaluated if necessary, if it's somewhere in the chain of that. So this could be due to anything, like you call get computed style in JavaScript, and if the browser says that the style is dirty, it'll recalculate everything. So basically, anytime a style calculation needs to be done. The question about when does Phosphor pull on these variables and cache them, the answer to that is it's going to depend on the widget. But most things right now in Phosphor that are going to be reading these minimum sizes are going to be panels that are doing absolute layout, and they're going to read that information and cache it anytime fit is called. So anytime you get a fit request message is processed by a panel, it's going to pull on the box sizing information, which includes minimum width and minimum height and that kind of stuff for all of its children, and compute what it needs from that. And so if you make a change to some CSS property that would cause the minimum or maximum, let's just call it the size limits, that would cause the size limits of some widget to change, then you should call fit on its parent so that it can take that into account and update itself.
Okay. So then the other big thing with CSS is that just the naming of these variables is really challenging, because they're, at least some of them, we're aiming for them to be public APIs, and Stephen and Darian and I had a long conversation the other day about that. I also sat down with some of the designers, and we spent time sort of looking at color schemes in different IDEs and tried to come up with sort of like what are the patterns in colors that are used in IDEs from a semantic perspective. And one thing we noticed is that in a light theme, there's certain sequences of colors that go from light to dark. For example, like in a light theme, your main layout color would go from like white to gray to a darker gray to a darker gray. Your typography goes in reverse. Like the most prominent typography color, font color, would be almost a black. Then you've got like a disabled color that's slightly lighter gray. And so you end up with sort of sequences of semantic colors that relate to each other in an important way. And so the way that we're expressing that, and the other thing is that typically there's more than just primary and secondary in these sequences. You can have as many as like 4. And so we started to name things. If you look at the hackpad, an example of border colors would be --JP- first dash border color, JP-- second border color, and third. The other thing we noticed is that oftentimes the main color may not be the most prominent. A great example of that is Visual Studio Code. their sort of main body font color is not pure white. They actually use pure white for like selected tab text. And so the way we've written these numbers is that the first one would be the main one. So like in a font color, the first would be your main font color. The 0th one is designed for sort of even more emphasis. So in a light theme, your 0th font color might be black, and you would only use it when you wanted to indicate more prominent than your standard one. The first one would be, like a dark gray, similar to what we've been using in our UI. So that's sort of the pattern that we're noticing and it's pretty, like Visual Studio Code has this type of layering. Other IDEs have similar layerings. And so what we've done is define sequences of colors for borders, font colors, layout color, and then a brand color and an accent color. So like for us right now, the brand color would be this material design blue that we're using. So I don't know, any comments on sort of this, both the naming part of it, but also the conceptual part of our usage of sort of sequences of colors. And typically these sequences are the same hue. So it would be weird if you had a layout color sequence that was not just one color. Like you'd probably pick like gray or blue gray or something like that. We've tried to avoid words like light and dark because we want these sequences also to work for inverted themes, dark themes as well. So thoughts?
Is there a way you could give more semantic names to it than just numbers?
I'm open for ideas.
Like emphasis, normal.
I mean, I'm kind of with Brian on this. It's really hard to be semantic for everything. I mean, we have H1, H2, H3, H4, all the way through H6 tags, like as part of the HTML spec. And I think they're the most semantically minded of everyone. So I think at some point when you have a lot of things that just literally represent some order of specificity, that numbers work. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right now, the way I'm implementing those numbers is right after the --JP, and I'm using, like, I'm not writing 0th as a word, I'm writing 0th and 1st and 2nd.
Well, what if we followed the model of H1 and just added the number at the end of the name of the style? So border color 1.
Border color 0. Yeah, that's I mean, it's simpler. What do people think?
I think that we in this conversation know what that means right now, but others will just think of them as, all right, these are the 6 colors they chose, but not know that they're 6 in order of priority. You might want to call it like either L1 or H1, something that says this is a level. This is actually an order of precedence.
Well, I think that would be. I think there's going to be some associated document about how to theme JupyterLab that's going to spell all this out. I don't think it'd be reasonable for people to be able to. Somebody's not going to be able to write a theme without that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, but I think that making it difficult to do it wrong, even if you're not reading the documents, is better, because people tend not to read the documents.
I'm just typing stuff in the -JP some -JP border color 0. I actually like just from a, like, what is it like to type and look at the the dash dash JP dash border color 0 dash border color 1. It looks pretty. I like that better than what I have in the code base right now.
Otherwise, you have to guess, if you're a non-English speaker, what's the appropriate suffix for a number.
Yeah, that's. I'm playing around with like a L. I mean, what I didn't. So one thing that the designers brought up is obviously the way that material design got around that exact problem is that they didn't use 0, 1, 2, 3. They used 100, 200, 300, 400. But we really did not want, like, we may not use material design colors, and so we didn't want to use like 100, 200 or something that was reminiscent of material design when in fact.
That's also how HTML font weights are, though. They use multiples of 100.
I probably.
That's why I would suggest not using multiples of 100, because people might think they're weights when they're not weights.
Exactly, and they're not, and they may not even be. Yeah, they're like in principle, someone could define a sequence that wasn't quite the same hue, but was like a curve that was almost the same hue, and I don't know. I'm probably, I think the border color 0, 1, 2, etc. to me probably makes the most sense at this point.
How many gradations do you see having?
Oh, right now I'm adding the minimum required to implement JupyterLab as we have it today. Right now I tend to be defining 0 through 3. There may be a few cases, like with font color, where a full 3 is probably not needed right now. The only other is that there's some situations where you need an inverse sequence. So, like for example, you need if you have a light theme, you need a dark main font color. You need a slightly lighter color for inactive things. Parts of your UI, though, even in a light theme, may be inverted. And so you need like a white font that's the inverse of the dark font. And so the way I'm doing that is just doing --jp inverse that thing. So, and it's pretty, I mean, to give you a sense, I don't have it right now, but I defined this and got some of the basic plugins using these variables, and like changing a few of the sequences very quickly, you can like retheme the entire thing. And it's going to, I mean, for it really to work well, we'll have to go through each plugin and have them use all these colors. But like my early experiments are really, really encouraging. And like I swapped out the main layout color from being gray to being blue-gray, and the contrast between the different shades and the sequences worked fairly well in our UI. And so one test case I'm going to do is try to get the dark theme of Visual Studio Code working, and it follows the same semantics, and so it shouldn't be too difficult to do that.
Are you planning on defaulting some of these? So you set border 0 and border 1 defaults to some percentage lighter or something. Can we do that? I guess with CSS. I think so.
Right.
Les lets you do that. But...
Yeah, I mean the way I'm doing, I mean, it's an internal implementation detail that we're doing right now. We're basically sticking with material design colors. And so they already have those sequences defined at discrete stops. And so like our primary layout colors right now are white, material design gray 200, and material design gray 400. And so and I don't. I think there are some color functions that you can use with CSS variables to do lighten, darken, opacity type operations. I've not played with those yet, but I eventually we probably will need to play with those. The only other thing to mention quickly, so I've got these basic color sequences for borders, fonts, layout, brand, accent colors. The naming of variables for individual plugins is a lot more difficult. Originally we talked about putting the public names for each plugin inside the main variables.less file for the theme or variables.css. I'm a little hesitant to commit to the names of all those plugin specific variables at this point. And so I'm tempted to move them into the plugin themselves and put them in a non-root selector and tell people for now, hey, that's private. What do people think about that? To give Chris a bit of context, what we want to try to distinguish between public and private CSS variables, and the way we talked about doing that is to define the public ones using the :root pseudo selector, so they're global, and define the private ones on specific CSS selectors specific to a given plugin.
I mean, you could also have --_ leading the
We
variable
talked
name.
about that. It felt sort of icky, but we could, yeah.
Or some other kind of character that indicates it's private, or prefixed or something.
Thing I like about that is that it makes absolutely clear to anybody writing a theme that you're using stuff that you should not be using and may break.
Yeah, and you can write a linter for it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, I could do --. I'm open. What we could do --JP star dash or --JP underscore.
Or just --_ JP.
I want to make it easy to find right off the bat.
Variable names need to be. There might be some restriction on what the first character can be.
Or --JP private. I mean, that would be explicit, readable, rather
long
than
and hard and tedious to type. I like that.
I'm not sure, like in Python, people, I think, understand what underscore means. I'm not sure that, CSS variables are brand new. And so no one's going to have any sort of conventions. They're probably going to look at it and say, oh, weird. So what's this ---- thing? They'll discover it's a CSS variable. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to put underscores. Like, I'm not sure people will understand the context and our intention there.
Then like $JP or something. Or
since we already have a convention for private variables in the TypeScript, and since there's at least some overlap between TypeScript authors and CSS authors, maybe we should stick to underscore. I don't like that.
As private, so let's use private. But
oh no, yeah, no. I would vote against $, personally, but That's just me.
Apparently not an R user. You don't like seeing dollar signs. Dollar sign indicates jQuery to make JavaScript build.
And you have Perl and you have jQuery, and none of those things have made me feel good in my life. So
I kind of like the --jp-private. It makes it a lot longer and tedious, which I think is a good thing if people are typing it out.
I'm okay with that.
Or just PRIV and abbreviate it a little bit.
Yeah, and if somebody,
The point is to make it tedious to type.
somebody files an issue saying, hey, I did this thing and it doesn't work, and it's literally got the word private or priv or whatever in there, you could just be like, sorry. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. Put that back. That wasn't for you.
Or --jp don't touch.
We really mean it this time.
Not, yeah.
This may break your code and kill your dog. Order whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea of being explicit about private.
Okay.
Instead of having a @ or a star or $sign or something.
And do people prefer private or priv?
I prefer private. Explicit is better than privileged. Oh yeah, which it is, right? If you're not privileged, don't use this.
But they could interpret it the wrong way. Like it's privileged as it's super important and you should set it. Yeah, I probably prefer. Okay. All right. I will keep.
Without the lead. Just kidding.
Yep. I will keep pounding away at this, and I will also write up documentation on all this because there's no way I'm going to finish implementing all this across all plugins. And I'll come up with like a checklist, a CSS guide that we can start to open issues for other plugins to sort of go through and do all this. All right. Well, anything else before we end?
One more quick question. I just upgraded I put in a PR to upgrade to TypeScript 2.0. Now, TypeDoc is lagging behind, so we can't actually make changes, but it did expose at least one bug and some other places where we had some interesting things going on. So TypeScript 2.0 has much better type inference. Anyway, are there any objections to moving to 2.0 RC?
If we lose TypeDoc, I would say yes.
Well,
yeah,
so
I would hold off until.
I have two PRs. One is just upgrading the 2.0 RC. They said it was. They felt that it was good for general use, and they're trying to stabilize it. Clean up any remaining bugs. The code actually, I put in another PR that actually makes code changes that depend on 2.0. So that shouldn't be merged, I agree, until TypeDoc is brought up to speed. But the current 2.0 PR just gives us the extra type checking, but doesn't actually change code. So 1.8 doesn't break, and TypeDoc doesn't break.
I mean, this does so 2.0 does open the door for a new discussion, because one of the big features in 2.0 that I would like to start using is non-nullable types.
Yep.
Which is like the big, huge thing for that. And so I think we should have the conversation about what our policy is going to be going forward about non-nullable types and whether that's an option we want to turn on by default. I'm definitely of the opinion that more guarantees or better guarantees is better. And so there are certainly some things there are lots of places in Fosper where I could make use of that and be more explicit. So anyway, that's we're not going to solve that in this discussion, but that's something that we should make a conscious choice about before we just move over to 2.0, because that could be a reason to, hey, we're doing 2.0 and we're going to do this. So anyway.
I definitely think we should not break TypeDoc.
Right. Yeah, agreed. So the current PR to upgrade to 2.0 does not break TypeDoc, but it does let us start playing with features and PRs for when TypeDoc is updated.
Yeah. What's your experience in the past about sort of the production-ready nature of their RCs? I mean, normally I would say let's wait till it's stable released, but I just don't know.
I don't remember them releasing an RC before. It's always been betas.
Right.
Sort of for. I don't know what everyone's development environment is, but I would very much like for my text editor to continue supporting the version I'm using, and the Sublime Text plugin is currently at 1.8.
Okay.
That's not a huge concern. Like, I can write without it, but I like it.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I put in the config change for the VS Code plugin to upgrade to 2.0, but that's valid.
And the Sublime plugin is written by Microsoft, so I don't imagine they're going to be too long before updating it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the last time they updated was years ago. I'm sure they'll update soon. Yeah.
Hopefully final will be released pretty soon. So I'll just, let's not merge the PR and wait for a week or two.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Any last minute things, or shall we call today?
I think we're good for the recording.
All right. Bye, Internet.